You can win $100 every day, Monday through Friday, from April 2nd to June 29th. Kinwin is the Good Times Lottery. Kinwin means good times for you and better times for the physically disabled of British Columbia.
Today's winner, J. Gordon Brady in Mackenzie.
Good morning. This is the week of your decision as to which party will govern British Columbia for the next 3, 4, or 5 years. My guest today will be the NDP leader, Dave Barrett. My guest tomorrow will be the Premier of the province, Bill Bennett. You may have heard some confusion about whether or not there would be a face-to-face. No such face-to-face was ever arranged. They will appear, hopefully, separately. Today, Mr. Barrett, tomorrow, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Barrett has just arrived in the studio now. And while we're getting him ready to go on the air, why, here you are, Mr. Barrett.
Hello, Mr. Webster.
You timed your entry just like a gladiator, just at the very last moment. I don't know who's the gladiator and who's the glad.
It was the weatherman's fault. We had to circle before we could land in the harbor.
You had to circle your wagons because of the arrows in your back, doubtless, Mr. Barrett. I was just about to, while you were coming, I was just about to ask the listeners, how far left do they think the former Premier will go if elected? What will he do? Remove all the campaign double talk of which both sided equally guilty, said Webster to himself this morning, and get down to specifics. Equal treatment for each. Today, Barrett, tomorrow, Bennett. After this break. Is it not a fact, Mr. Barrett, that already big business and big investment in British Columbia is scared witless that you will be re-elected? Vis-a-vis Crown Zellerbach's delicacy about $150 million investment if you're back in power.
I don't think so. I think that normal investments will continue. I don't think there's a forest company that can't project its investments 2 or 3 down the roads regardless. The biggest difficulty we have in the forest industry is about 12 to 15 years down the road, we're going to have a serious problem in terms of access to resource.
Is it not a fact that the last time round your government was blamed for a 2-year sag in the economy because of your ebullience and enthusiasm for socialism at that time?
I think we were blamed for a lot of things, right up to the weather this morning, but in actual fact, as people calmed down and made a comparison and saw investments in the Western world, they discovered that actually investments were higher generally in British Columbia during that period of time than in other Canadian areas.
Is it not a fact, though, that apart from learning to keep your jacket on during campaigns, that you have cultivated the moderate pinstriped image, and that some people on the right think that you are still a wolf in sheep's clothing?
Well, I don't know how I can react to that other than to say that the 3.5 years in government, 3.5 years in opposition have allowed me to maintain some pretty good contacts, both nationally and internationally, in terms of investment and projects. I am asking people to compare on the basis of the 2 administrations and the proposals that we have now if we return to office.
Let's be quite specific about what you will do, things to which you are committed right now.
Right.
You will bring back, against the wealthy, succession duties.
Yes, with a $1 million cash exemption and a $1 million property exemption. Regardless of who leaves what to whom, there will be a $1 million cash exemption and a $1 million property exemption. So it's a total of $2 million complete exemption before any graduated tax comes on.
You will bring back those, forgive my editorializing, dreadful jobs for the boys' resource boards, which were widely discredited the last time.
Well, not discredited by any other than uninformed observers.
Like myself.
Well, you are not aware, for example, of the success in the Charlottes, Queen Charlottes, where it has run well, and is run cooperatively. Like all new programs, there's some that work well, some that don't.
Like Kitsilano was a flop. The Vancouver one was really a bit of a disaster.
I don't
Got out
think
of hand
so.
altogether.
Look,
led towards your 100 million overrun.
No, I don't think that's really appropriate in terms of assessment of the resource board. We will let the communities decide themselves whether or not they want to go in that direction. I ask people to calmly examine the cost savings that are actually taking place in social service delivery care on the Charlottes, where the resource board is working well and where Mr. Van der Zam and Ms. McCarthy have not touched it.
Charlotte's, Vancouver. Anyway, you
Okay.
would pattern the whole of the province with resource boards. The whole province again.
If the community wants them and wants to participate.
But doesn't that make your administration and delivery of welfare almost impossible when you have varying standards as you had the last time?
No, not at
Where
all. It
those
saves money, Jack, and get this straight. It saves money when local people are more aware of who's getting it for what purpose. If you have a centralized bureau, as you do have in Victoria, more and more centralism, there is less opportunity to be flexible and assist people who might have an alternative plan to get off welfare. In one case...
In other words, you'd give more authority back to your own kind, the social worker.
No, to the administrators at the local level, those people who can make decisions. I'll give you a quick illustration. We had a woman in Surrey, 3 children, husband died, widowed. She wanted to go back to university for 2 years, finish her teacher training. Under the old rules, couldn't do it. Under ours, she did it. She's off welfare, she's now a teacher, and she's paying taxes. A little bit of flexibility coupled with some common sense at the local level can save us a lot of money.
You don't subscribe to what I believe was effective when social credit said the squeaky wheel was getting all the money, will increase the standard rates for everybody.
No.
You don't subscribe to that.
No.
You'll encourage food co-ops. Will these food co-ops be able to pay the fancy wages that the supermarket people now get paid?
They rely on volunteers. That's why part of the reason for their success. We will not do anything for co-ops except encourage them on the following basis. We will give them, out of the British Columbia Development Corporation, administrative assistance, and we will give them clerical guidance in terms of their own structure. From there on, they're on their own. No cash grants. They're purely on their own, volunteer organizations. If they wish to come together, good luck to them.
In other words, you'd like them to grow so there would, in effect, be fewer jobs for the retail, wholesale, and the rest in the big rip-off market, chain markets.
There will be no fewer jobs, Jack. You and I both know that the growth rate of co-ops will be very minimal. It is an option for some people if they choose it, but it's not going to be an overwhelming overnight thing.
How far to the left will you go? I've got a number of specifics here which indicate that you might go, but you must be very pleased that Kinnaird has been quiet during the campaign and that Williams is off your back.
I don't think you base a party on personalities, certainly not one like ours. We are a social democratic party. I would commend you to respond to, or to look at Bill Bennett's response to the visit by Helmut Schmidt. Bill Bennett met Helmut Schmidt, said, "My, what a wonderful job he's doing in West Germany. I wish we could run our economy that way." And then someone nudged him and said, "Bill Bennett, he's a social democrat." That's the same model, Jack, that we're trying to follow.
Hate to think of following German models.
No, social democratic model.
Super royalties. You have scrapped your plan for super royalties and come up with an even perhaps more dangerous aspect. You said on this program the last time you will consider each operation under your discretion. Does that not leave the door open for the very thing one doesn't want in a democracy, where the top man, who might be you, says, look, you're going to be all right, I'm going to fix?
No, look, let me...
Super royalties will come back in one form or another, will they not?
No, I've made this clear, and let's go over it calmly. What I've said is that after we brought in our royalty scheme, the federal government intruded into the provincial area. That happened all across Canada. We had a terrible confusion in British Columbia of overlapping of federal and provincial taxation jurisdiction. I have said clearly, no changes. To the present situation, we will sit down with the industry, sit down with federal government, sit down with the trade unions, and straighten out the mess of overlapping taxation that in some instances caused taxes of over 100%. In terms of flexibility, what I've said is if there is some area of taxation that if we lift and can create a secondary investment such as the Afton mine with a smelter, then we will sit down and listen to any proposal from a company that wishes a secondary investment.
Did I hear you say that you'll keep the social credit current legislation?
The current legislation will stay until we straighten out the mess between Ottawa and British Columbia over the overlapping taxation. I make that very clear.
One of the first things you will do, however, is scrap the extension. Am I correct? Will you scrap the extension? Will you allow municipal workers, garbage workers, education workers, and those included in Section 11, will you allow them to strike? In other words, will you forthwith amend the Essential Services Act to put these people back on, out of that act?
We will allow free people in a free society to collective bargaining. There are situations, in emergency situations.
But you are saying that you will take those provisions out of the act right now?
Yes, we will take those provisions because we don't prejudge people. There are situations that happened in the past where we had to move in specific cases, and I stand by that. There was a fireman strike where we had to move, a ferry strike where we had to move. I was prepared to move, but I don't prejudge people, Jack. I say in a free society, let them have free collective bargaining. If a government of the day is faced issue by issue with responsibility, then we will accept that responsibility.
But on the specific, if you win this election, you will amend the so-called Essential Services Act,
That
and
is
you
correct.
will free municipal workers and education workers from causing something like, which caused something like the Kootenai School strike.
Yes, and in the Kootenai strike, you will recall that they were willing to lift their pickets after the Premier appealed to them, but he didn't listen after that and went ahead for political purposes.
Well, there was a great political brouhaha on that,
Jack,
Mr. Barrett. It's
okay.
not quite fair to put it down in one sentence.
On television, he said clearly, there's still time. I approached the union. I got them to agree to lift their pickets, but it didn't matter anyway. They were going to bring it in. Jack, sure there are going to be problems. Sure there are going to be situations, but you have to face up to them on a one-to-one basis, not sweeping, broad legislation.
Perhaps an unfair question, but you didn't quite answer how far you would go to the left, because you're still controlled by the party. Even Barrett is still controlled by his caucus, right?
Well, I won't go any further left than what Bill Bennett has kept in terms of our Petroleum Corporation, which he voted against. I won't go any further left than our Agricultural Land Reserve, which he's kept. I won't go any further left than the Mincome, which he's kept. I won't go any further than the Pharmacare, which he's kept. Jack Webster, if you want to define it as left, right, upside down, or backwards, the fact is the most significant legislation passed by the New Democratic Party has been proven good stuff.
And yet you had to leave it to Bennett to bring in the $6.50 a day long-term care.
Jack, of course, because in 3.5 years we didn't change the whole world. On the one hand, you ask, are you going to go too far left? But on the other, why didn't you do this, this, and this?
Will you give the hospitals, and it would sound like you would, open-ended budgets forthwith?
No way, Jack. We review budgets on the basis of individual area needs.
Wasn't Bennett right to freeze them to 5%? Otherwise
That
it would
was
have gone
the
crazy.
most foolish thing in the world to do.
You wouldn't have frozen them.
No, you have to sit down. The Vancouver area may have special needs. Supposing you have a brand new town where there's a new mine opening. They have special needs. You
We're
sit
not
down.
talking about that. We're talking about your attack on his 5%
Right.
limitation on hospital
Okay,
budgets. Later it increased to 7.5%.
I'm making the
You give the
point.
clear impression that you'll give the Hospital Employees Union and the doctors and the nurses all the money they want.
That is absolutely untrue. We will deal with each hospital in each region on the basis of needs. Some can go down to 1% or minus 10%. Others need to go up to 12%. It depends on what that hospital and what that area needs, not some bureaucrat in Victoria telling them from there.
Mr. Barrett, leader of the NDP with Webster, after this break. Mr. Barrett, running for his political life, right?
Every time I'm in a campaign,
Don't win this time, you're dead.
Oh, they've said that about me for the last 15 years. I never predict.
You know,
Jack.
all this double talk, forgive me, from all politicians about freezes and open-ended, and I'm guilty of subscribing to it. Are you aware of the total cynicism there is out there among union men as well as businessmen of what we feel to be a vastly bureaucratic, feather-bedded monster which can't stop growing? And isn't it a time for a freeze on all that kind of thing by any government that's in power?
Jack, that's, in terms of your analysis of the mood out there, I don't disagree at all, but a simplistic response by saying freeze is not the answer.
Except on gas and oil prices,
Oh,
which
now.
of course you'll jump in and say we can afford to freeze.
I'll tell you why. If you notice on even your own channel here, a report in the United States where the 7 major oil companies have been gouging prices based on old oil at the wellhead, but new gasoline prices at the pump. That's got to stop, Jack. Some of that went on here in Canada.
How much control have you got on oil prices here if you wanted to freeze? We still haven't got equalized gas prices throughout the province.
No, we haven't, and that's a goal that we have to reach for. We do have the Petroleum Corporation started by the New Democratic Party, kept by Social Credit, and the Energy Commission that has the ability legislatively, if proclaimed, to review all price requests and to grant them wholly, partly, or none. That is the authority that already exists that we intend to use.
I had your friend, your newfound ally, Mr. Ralph Lofmark of Social Credit fame on the other day.
Yeah.
And he made it perfectly clear that he's for the railway to Alaska if, for continental transportation policy, if the Americans pay for it, and only if the Americans pay for it.
Right on.
When you subscribe to that,
Right
are you
on.
not guilty of surrendering, even for the purposes of U.S. foreign policy, which you don't like, I'm sure, the sovereignty of British Columbia on a railroad on that basis?
Absolute nonsense. We have the St. Lawrence Seaway, and we haven't sold out any sovereignty on that. There's nothing wrong with international cooperation. That railroad through to Alaska is a transportation corridor for us, the Yukon, and Alaska. The Americans must put the upfront money. It is their money that must come with federal funds to complete that project. We have international highways, we have international seaways, and we're talking about a publicly owned, now let's get that straight, publicly owned railroad between Canada, the United States, British Columbia, Washington State, Yukon, and the Alaska.
The Americans must come to the rescue of our bankrupt railroad.
No, they need the corridor.
Oh, if they need it, but they're
Yeah.
going to have to pay it.
Look, we've got our money sitting there. It ends nowhere. Irma Morrison says in the Auditor General's annual report, $700 million. If you want it just to sit
In
there-
what?
In debts on the railroad in terms of
You
the
knew
investment.
about these debts,
Of
Mr. Barrett.
course.
Nobody ever paid a nickel of the interest. You
Of
capitalized the interest on those debts.
Of
You
course.
and WAC and Bill Bennett.
Of course we did, but we pointed out that $55 million in losses had been hidden. We brought that out, and the Royal Commission confirmed that. Of course we've spent that money on the railroad, but what's the sense of ending it? Nowhere.
No, providing you can get the Americans to pay for it.
Well, what have I been working on? You know very well that I've been in Washington, D.C. I met with Brock Adams. I met with Senator Magnuson. I went to Alaska. I've made it very clear.
In other words, you didn't make this just as a cheap shot to get some upcountry seats because of the BC Rail's present sag on the Dease Lake line.
I don't see how anyone could describe the efforts I made on behalf of the province of British Columbia anything other than positive efforts. If I have to go to Timbuktu to get jobs for British Columbia without selling out BC, I'll do it.
But you made one bad mistake in your last administration, Mr. Barrett.
What was that?
You didn't pick up PWA, and now the jobs are being taken away. You
Isn't
could have bought that.
Now, let's talk about how far left you want Dave Barrett to go. Now, you're sitting there saying, how far left?
I'm only a questioner, Mr. Barrett. You're here
Okay.
to answer them.
Now
My philosophies
all
mean
right.
nothing.
But now, let's just deal with that, because that's the kind of semi-schizophrenic attitude that exists in this province. On the one hand, how far left are you prepared to go? But you made one big mistake, you didn't pick up PWA. Yes, we
You
should
admit that was a mistake
we
from
should
your
have-
point of view?
We should have bought PWA, but remember the hysteria at the time? There were hotlines screaming socialism. There were people yelling the NDP is buying this, buying that. Yes, we had an option to buy the PWA. Yes, we decided not to go ahead. Yes, Peter the Red in Alberta bought it. Yes, he phoned me when he bought it, and I told him clearly that we were willing to cooperate. As a matter of fact, I would have preferred if we had owned it jointly. Unfortunately, we don't. Bill Bennett is not fighting Lougheed to save those jobs, and I'm disappointed about that.
Said he would, but I haven't seen any
He
fighting
hasn't
yet.
done anything.
You couldn't save them either, because Peter the Red owns it. He can do what he likes with
There
it.
are other levers, Jack. There's nothing like a little hard bargaining behind closed doors. There are other levers you can use in dealing with Alberta to save those jobs here in British Columbia.
Let me think. Where do we go to next? You're not talking about the BC Tel this time. That's long forgotten. Remember when Berger lost the election on taking over the BC Tel? Yeah, that's dropped. You've buried that one, haven't
I
you?
buried it when we got elected. I said we would buy shares. Social Credit screamed, said they'd never do it. Then they bought shares. Wolf bought shares. When Bennett was confronted with that, he said, oh, I didn't do it. Wolf did it.
Webster, with Premier Barrett. More questions from me long before you get to it after this break. Both parties, Mr. Barrett, you and Social Credit, have come to the decision no discrimination in insurance rates, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, no argument about that.
Except,
Will you...
Except
what?
Except that we were moving towards it very rapidly. We had dropped the rates in some instances by 2/3 for some young drivers. Those were immediately lifted, those drops, and the people went up very, very high in '76. Yes, we're both committed in the same direction.
Are you serious when you say that you will take ICBC surpluses and loan them to municipalities?
Yeah, and I'll tell you why.
But I mean, think it through, Mr. Barrett. It
Well,
means that...
I want you to think it through, so I'll give you the reasons why we should do it. There's $528 million there in cash reserves
For what?
for potential claims against the company, right? It is estimated by actuaries that $200 to $250 million is enough backup. After all, $250 million on a straight 10% return, which would be about an average, is $25 million in interest. The other $250 million we would loan out at prevailing rates on short-term,
To whom?
to municipalities, to provide short-term and longer-term money to build roads, sidewalks, sewers, employ people, put that money to use. We'll still get the interest on it, and we will have people earning wages paying taxes as well.
And that's right. And when the money has to come back, it comes back out of the taxes of the local taxpayers, just like Canada Pension
But
Plan
if
funds.
you, like WAC Bennett used to say, better to do it now. It'll never be cheaper. Let's get those jobs going. Let's get the work done at the local level.
You have vast, great expansion plans?
No, I want catch-up plans. There are sewerage projects that need to be done, road projects, parks, that we can employ a lot of young people rather than having them on welfare.
However, will you take instant legislative action to throw the private companies presently competing in certain areas out of British Columbia?
Not instant legislation. We will sit down and see the impact of the return of those private companies. We will sit down and take a look at the impact.
You have changed.
No, I have not changed. If we...
Autoplan. Government monopoly. The only way it could work, you tell me. And now you tell me you'll sit down and look at it.
Well, look at the...
Why wouldn't you go back to your basic principles and throw them out?
Look, Jack Webster, there's nothing rigid about the approach in terms of examining what impact. If they can't compete, then they'll leave on their own. But we intend to move in the direction we intended.
Will you cut the 11 million aid to independent schools to which you are opposed? Would you cancel that legislation?
No.
No.
No. People, we've made it very clear, I've said it on a number of occasions, people have already made decisions about their children's education. There is no way anybody in a responsible position can turn back the clock and say that's the end of it. We will not stop the legislation. However, we intend to sit down with the Federation of Independent Schools and talk to them about some of the hiring practices and some aspects of what appear to be cases of discrimination in terms of the expenditure of those monies. Now, I don't want any breaking of the kind of non-discriminatory use of public funds in hiring.
In other words, you would make quite sure that the teachers in independent schools are fully unionized with the same wages and conditions as BC Teachers Federation.
I didn't say that. That's voluntarily the actions of teachers themselves. What I'm saying is that I don't want any discrimination around the use of public funds by race, sex, or creed. That is the area we'd sit down and talk about.
That's the area which you don't like, but which you're stuck with, and you will honor the pledge as far as the pledge now goes.
The pledge, as far as the money goes, yes, but...
No increases.
We will sit down and deal with the question of discrimination that is taking place, as we understand, in some instances, and we want that cleared up absolutely.
Talking about unions.
Yep.
Would you reinstitute instantly the Fair Employment Practices Act to prevent any non-union contractors working on government jobs at any level?
Yes, except that we would open the number in terms of local employees. We would consider expanding the number in terms of perhaps up to 10 or 15 employees exempt at the local level.
Oh, on industry, I forgot.
Yeah.
If elected on Thursday, you will step in and breach this option, I suppose, that somebody's got about buying Ocean Falls.
Yes, yes, Jack. That's, you know, we can't allow a community like that to be under constant threat of closure and non-closure. It is part and parcel of an asset that we bought. It can survive. There are good plans for Ocean Falls in terms of access to other timber, and the community should be given a guaranteed stability.
Ferries, Mr. Barrett.
Good stuff. Ferries.
Ferries.
Good.
You announced some strange group rate reductions.
Yeah.
7 days in advance.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep.
Which would lose the Ferry Corporation some revenue.
Not too much.
2%, I believe.
Yeah,
the
2%.
man Charlie Barber
That's
said.
right, 2%.
What are you going to do with the $25 million white elephant which your government bought, which is still sitting up in the slipways, and now Social Credit are talking about using this uneconomic ship on some coastal run? That
First
was
of
one
all-
of your biggest disasters.
Not at all. You see, you get judgmental again without reviewing the facts. The facts were
Question
we
me
were
on the
short.
facts.
Well, the facts are this. When we were elected, we were desperately short of ships. We picked up the Stanya Denica for $18 million. It served its purpose for 2 years filling in till we could build the catch-up ships that Social Credit has now sold
Did you try
off.
to sell it?
No. What we view the Stanya Denica is in two options. One, coastal ferry, coastal transportation, and or replacement for the Princess Marguerite, which we saved in terms of tourist needs on Vancouver Island. Those are two options. Two absolute options for the Stanya Denica, now the Queen of Surrey.
You're spending about another $8 million to bring its electrical system and its accommodation up to standard.
Why not? It's cheaper than starting off from scratch. We picked up that ship to fill in that gap. We needed it.
Mr. Barrett, it was a bad buy.
It was.
You couldn't sell it for $8 million.
I wish, I know that you wouldn't have it, but I wish some other people would go back and read the newspapers, listen to the old tapes of hotlines about the lineups at the ferries when we came in, and the need for another ship immediately. And the pressure was on. We got that ship. It filled the gap, and that ship was a good buy and still has a fantastic use here in British Columbia.
Now, on a lighter subject,
Okay.
I became very offended for the first time at a candidate's proposition.
Which candidate?
Barnes, is this a joke in bad taste? $5 a pound tax reductions for fatzos like you and me? What about the discrimination against the skinnies who can't qualify? Did you endorse that piece of nonsense?
No, I didn't endorse.
Do you think it's funny?
I think it's kind of humorous. Jack, the whole world is not overly serious. Some people are more sensitive about extra pounds than others, but I'm telling you...
I'll show you the press release as if prepared by your caucus.
No, that was Emery's idea. I think I'm a bit envious. The guy is lean.
Well, as I said on the air, if I were a backbench government MLA and a social worker, I would have time to relax and slim all I wanted. And so would you, Mr. Barrett.
Well, I don't know. You're so busy. I don't see how you keep up with all the meals if you're going to be that, approach. Come on, Jack. It was a bit of a joke, and I think humorous. And really, you and I both know that we should have some incentive to lose a little weight. Good for Emery. Little humor into the campaign doesn't hurt anything.
I'll tell you right now, if I were in Vancouver Centre, I'd vote early and often against him.
No, you wouldn't.
Minimum wage. How much are you going to hammer the small businessman on your increase in minimum wage, which presently in British Columbia for adults is $3 an hour?
Yeah. What we need, Jack, is something that I'm sorry we didn't finish, and the Socreds never tackled, and that was a use of the Labor Committee. I'm not announcing any figure. The use of the Labor Committee to come up with a long-term formula in handling the minimum wage so that when it's brought in and raised...
COLA.
COLA is, I think we should bring in the provincial, gross provincial product. I think we should look at overall investment and the influence on the small sector. I'm not unduly...
You won't bid me $3.50 an hour?
No, I won't bid you.
$3.75?
No.
$3 1/4?
No, not till we sit down, small business groups, the Department of Labor, and sit down. And what I'd like to do, Jack, is finally work out a formula that automatically deals with it so the small businessman can plan over every year of his budget without having to worry about the impact of it.
Dave Barrett, leader of the NDP, and Webster after this break. Your answer to this question, Mr. Barrett, will cost you votes. Will you ban South African wines as you did before?
Not as arbitrarily. We'll move towards a committee with religious communities, with other interest groups. I am very persuaded by the activities of some of the religious communities about some social conscience in terms of government's actions.
Oh, Mr. Barrett, this isn't the Mr. Barrett I know. Are you telling me when I ask you a simple question you're going to set up a religious committee?
No, just slow down. I'm telling you that we're going to listen to arguments from some areas, especially religious communities who've made a very good case about Canada's involvement with totalitarian administrations, but you can't be hypocritical about it. They are both of the left and of the right. We're not going to make arbitrary decisions without good cause. We rushed last time, I admit it, and there are arguments both ways. I want to be far slower, far more careful about that kind of arbitrary action.
Mr. Barrett, I must say you do baffle me. It's my turn for a little giggle.
Okay.
I asked you simply.
Yeah.
Will you ban South African wines?
No, I'm not going to ban South African wines, no.
And then I was going to ask you if you were going to ban Russian wines.
No, I'm not going to ban
And
anybody's...
Chilean wines.
Not going to ban anybody's wine right now, and I don't want any winos to get upset about this.
You're going to have little... some winos, they vote, you know.
I know they do, Jack, but I'm telling you clearly
See,
that we're not...
I have demonstrated that you have somehow or other changed to just a trifle.
I've got a few scars in my body.
Who is going to be your welfare minister, by the way, talking of scars? Who? Is that Rosemary Brown?
I've made no plans about anything beyond waiting for the results on Thursday.
Next one. Rent controls are presently only on properties up to 300.
Yeah.
Will you increase that?
Yes, we will go back because there has been a dramatic increase in some areas on some people of rents that they can't cope with. The removal has been too quick. Bill Bennett and Social Credit pledged in the last election, pledged in writing and ads, saying they would not remove rent controls. As a consequence, people planned on that, and I think it was unfair to break that promise. Yes, we will go back and
Total rent control.
No, we will move back slowly to protect the minimum income earner and those who are in a family situation. We will review the whole rent structure, but we will not start wiping it away.
No quick decision on that either.
Yes, we're going to go back, you know, to where we were.
With the concomitant complaints from developers that the moment you institute controls on their rent, they won't build any more rental accommodation.
That is absolute nonsense. Rental accommodation was soaring simply because the federal government made a smart move in terms of giving a tax write-off for property development.
Bennett says he will gradually reimpose rent controls to a higher level.
We will bring...
Barrett.
That's right, yeah, let's get it straight, yeah. We're going to bring rent controls on a basis of making sure that no one suffers by a dramatic removal or gradual removal of those rent controls. We will sit down and see where we are in terms of catch-up of stock of housing. There's been a change of that. There is more stock of housing. We want to take a look.
Oh, you mean Bennett might be right?
No, the stock of housing came up directly related to the federal government decision to give write-offs on real estate developments.
My next question is deadly serious, and I must phrase it carefully.
Okay.
Will you allow a Administration of Justice, Attorney General Department, will you allow a situation to continue or ever happen again, which exists in Vancouver right now, whereby a certain provincial court judge cannot handle certain cases which come in front of him because of his involvement with the Judicial Council and other distasteful matters?
No.
Do you think it's right?
No.
You would not allow it?
No, I made it very clear on this show, no equivocation, no ifs, ands, or buts. The responsibility for handling the administration of justice and the appointment of judges comes right out of the Attorney General's office. It is the Attorney General, who is an elected person in the province of British Columbia, who has the responsibility to make those decisions. Alec MacDonald was instructed to do that under our administration. Gardy Gardam and Bill Bennett have not done it in this administration. I say to you clearly and seriously, under no circumstances would we allow judges to continue on the bench that are under our jurisdiction, just as we would not allow other employees with deep personal problems or anything else that hinders them from doing their job. That's just as plain
You too would give them leave of absence with pay forever and a day if necessary.
That is not So, Mr. Webster, let's get it clear. Everybody has a job to do. If they can't do their job, they are laid off or fired. No one is exempt from having to toe that line under the NDP, whether they are a judge, a cabinet minister, or anyone else.
At the present, we're told that under the Judicial Council Act of the province, that the Attorney General is powerless to act.
I do not believe that. You can pick up the act. I've been in the legislature for 20 years. That act is very clear to me. The authority rests with the Attorney General, and he must grasp the nettle. Frequently, there is an emotional conflict of interest around lawyers dealing with lawyers. I regret that. The same happens with other professions as well. I make it very clear, if someone cannot perform their job, they cannot be on the public purse.
Hey, I welcome your answer, but I must make it perfectly clear to you, as you'll agree, Mr. Barrett, that this situation, particularly in Vancouver, has been suppurating for a number of years under your administration too.
Jack, my instructions to Alec MacDonald were clear. I was faced with a serious problem in cabinet on the same basis. I made a clear-cut decision, and that's that. And now any instance that was brought to my attention by Alec, the law applies, and it will apply. It must apply. I have nothing against anyone personally, but if we're going to maintain a positive attitude towards law and order and equal justice to all, then there must be no exceptions.
Isn't it about time you broke up the cabal of lawyers and appointed a non-legal Attorney General to take a fresh look at this whole closed shop interrelationship business?
I don't know if it's entirely valid to say that a non-lawyer would do as good as a lawyer. I think it depends on the person and the commitment of the person rather than their profession. I think that you might put in a non-lawyer who would be awed by the professional group around him. It depends on the commitment of the person.
Webster and Dave Barrett, leader of the NDP, after this break. One more segment with Mr. Barrett, and then we'll throw him to you. Walter Young, one of your great philosophical mates, writing recently said about brick shares, there is no merit in the plan. It is pure flim-flam of the most obvious and venal kind. This is one of your boys.
Yeah.
While it is true that the NDP had no choice politically but to support the 5 free shares of brick, it would have been nobler by far to oppose it. Would you not agree with that?
No, I don't think so. I opposed it. I had a report from our research department said that it's too far down the line to stop. The most important thing of all in terms of those assets is to make sure that they remain in the control in British Columbia. That's what I've said we will do legislatively. The 5 free shares can go right ahead. We must maintain control of those assets here in British Columbia, nowhere else.
Okay, Mincome. You have promised, with some profligacy, COLA on Mincome.
No.
By legislation.
I'm guaranteeing what Monique Begin, the present national minister, has said is money coming from Ottawa that was started by Mark Lalonde. We had an agreement with the federal Liberal government that cost of living would be shared and passed on routinely. Social Credit has been pocketing that cost of living money. Monique Begin has said that publicly, and I agree with her.
Grace denied it this morning.
Well,
said she's got the provinces mixed up.
Well, I tell you that Grace is absolutely wrong on this. We had an agreement with Ottawa. They have kept that money and pocketed. That money belongs to the senior citizens of British Columbia.
I'll ask Bennett for his version tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
You've promised an oil refinery at Merritt when we already have an overproduction capacity in oil refineries in British Columbia.
Do not have an overproduction. As a matter of fact, in some instances, we ship oil back up from Cherry Point. There is a trade-off. What I'm talking about is an arrangement and a commitment that we had when we were in government. We never had the opportunity of following through on it. I was in Great Britain last year. An $80 million initial investment from Kleinwort Benson and British Petroleums for another refinery in the central interior of the province of British Columbia.
You have been accused by Stevens, the Conservative Party, of your people and your committee of doctoring that report, where certain blame for interference was placed against both the social creditors and your people On the BC Hydro, how do
I'm-
you plead to that?
I'm satisfied that there's no one on that committee that has doctored any report. I'm satisfied that the final report was agreed by all committee members, and I understand Vic Stevens was a member of that committee.
Are we going to be faced, as we were in your 72 election, with an immediate flood of people from outside the province, said Webster to be parochial?
Well, to be-
like from Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Cass Beggs, and his famous 10,000 a year pension?
We will, first of all, ask the profligate social credit additions to minister's office, to the premier's office, to all of those people who have been added by the score under social credit in political jobs, and you've been given lists of those. We would ask they would do the decent thing and resign. There will be no vengeance firings such as there were under social credit.
Very confident you're going to win.
No, you asked me a question if I won, what I would do, and I'm just answering. If we win, this is what I'd do. And I'm making it very clear that in place of some of these senior jobs, there is no need at this point to bring in anyone else. We have some very competent people, except in some areas. Except in some areas. I'm worried about a weakness in our energy bargaining position. We have fallen back in terms of keeping up with the price of natural gas.
Bring back Jimmy Rhodes?
Oh, I would certainly hope that Jimmy would play some role. Even the Socreds admit that Jimmy was a significant factor.
What the observant member of the public gets sick and tired about is you get in and away in come all the NDPers and they're running around in squads. You get out and in come all the social creditors who now have more money and perhaps more jobs, and we seem to accept patronage as a way of life.
Look, there is a limited scope of patronage that exists in terms of any government, and the limit is executive assistance to the ministers. You would agree with that. In terms of running Crown corporations, you cannot have a person at the head of the Crown Corporation like BC Hydro who is committed to nuclear power when you have a government that is opposed to nuclear power. So it's obvious that someone like Mr. Bonner would resign. He understands that thing. That's very clear.
Anyway, on nuclear power, you stand alone among the socialist leaders in Canada.
Yes.
Broadbent and Blakeney
Yeah.
want uranium exploration.
Yeah.
They want nuclear power. You don't.
I've made it very clear.
Is that for cheap advantage in this
No.
election?
15 years ago, I went to a national convention and stood alone in terms of the number of MLAs from other provinces saying clearly and firmly, no, that's the British Columbia Party's position. My position has never changed in the 15 years. I fought other areas of my party, Saskatchewan and federally. I've made it very clear here in British Columbia for 15 years. Check the record. No radioactive materials exploration, no radioactive materials mining, and no nuclear power in British Columbia. I've never changed my position on that.
We don't normally talk international politics, but you as a social democrat would agree. The nuclear umbrella of the United States is a godsend to the West in times of crisis, don't you?
I think that the nuclear umbrella of the Soviet Union, the nuclear umbrella of the United States is international madness. And I don't care
Well, no,
if
it's
someone...
madness.
All right. Now, so someone is a better mad than another mad? They're crazy, Jack. That's my attitude. Anybody who consciously makes a decision in the Soviet Union, the United States, in China, or in Great Britain, that the use of nuclear weapons is an ultimate goal is absolutely crazy. And I don't care if they're socialist, capitalist, blue,
But it's
green,
there.
or... Yes, and it's stupid. Now, doesn't
And it must be maintained for these crazy reasons.
Well, then let's scale back craziness.
But as far as BC is concerned, out damned nuclear.
It's not here, it's not needed, and it won't be here.
That's the one form of mining which you say, stay away from my borders.
There is no known method of
That's right,
control.
though, isn't it?
Yes, because this reason, and get it straight, there's no known method of controlling radioactive materials waste, either from mining or from nuclear power plants.
Alec MacDonald will undoubtedly be your Attorney General. Who will be your Minister of Education?
Jack, I'm not going to sit here in this program and say so and so and so and so and so. I'm fighting an election. If we win, I'll be faced with that problem on Friday morning. I'll deal with it then.
Well, I would have thought that Eileen Daly and Rosemary Brown would be both naturals for the two jobs, welfare and education.
Nobody has any guarantee of anything. On midnight, on Thursday night, if I'm responsible, I'll have to sit down and make some decisions. But I have no preconceived attitudes about anybody if we are faced with that situation.
Mr. Barrett, if you win, will it be open sesame for the BC Fed and the John Fryer of the government unions who might well be slavering on the sidelines looking for the generous-handed Mr. Barrett to look after his friends in the unions?
They may be doing a lot of things on the sidelines, but you will recall that I was firm with the trade union movement before. I intend to be firm and fair again. I tell you this, that just check my record compared to the Socreds in dealing with the trade union movement.
Oh, you're talking about back to work. I'm talking about the vast expansion of unions and the generous increases.
Social credit has increased the number of civil servants by over 4,000 since they've been in office. Measure that. And the fact is, Jack, that we intend to bargain very tough and very firm. No one is getting any handouts.
Your calls to Dave Barrett, leader of the NDP, as your moment of decision comes up for Thursday after this break. Well, I haven't even mentioned human rights.
No?
Surprised they never fired Kathleen Ruff, haven't you?
She's done a good job. She's done it very good. Yes, she has.
Ask Collins about that, will you?
A lot of people. Look, that's a really difficult job. She's done a good job.
Well, don't get me on it.
No.
Just as soon I stay away
Okay.
from that subject, because I'm not very balanced on it. I am on everything else, of course. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Barrett, I'm a liberal who is going to vote on the basis of one issue in this election, both federally and provincially, and that is on energy and on this matter of nuclear power. And I've heard what you've stated, and I have some concern. I heard Mr. Broadbent yesterday on Cross Canada Checkup and his support for this, and I'm also aware that Eldorado Nuclear is planning a refinery in Saskatchewan for export. Now, what I would like to know, two things. What do you plan to do to protect British Columbia from the transportation of radioactive substances through our mountains and ports?
Yeah.
And the next thing is, do you plan any legislation to curb the power of BC Hydro?
Second question first, we intend to decentralize hydro administratively, not fiscally, because I agree here with Dr. Gordon Schrum that it would be a nightmare to decentralize it fiscally. Administratively, yes, and allow regional input into hydro's decisions. Number one, my position on nuclear materials has been clear. That has been my position for 15 years. I am deeply disappointed with the federal decision, and I fought against it in my party.
Federal NDP decision.
Yes, I'm deeply disappointed. I make that very clear. I'm deeply disappointed with Saskatchewan's position. However, they've made that decision democratically. I'm opposed to it. In terms of handling radioactive materials coming through British Columbia, I really don't know what authority we would or could have in preventing or controlling those radioactive materials through the province. I've never had that question raised before. I don't know the answer. It's a darn good question, but I'd like to find out in terms of our jurisdiction what we could or couldn't do.
What bothers me is you talk about regional input. Here we go again with little committees running the hydro, with the local hairy-headed ecologists screaming and ranting and raving.
Oh, Jack, I don't know where you perceive these kind of images. If you had gone to the public hearings up at Revelstoke and saw businessmen appearing, chambers of commerce with nice short hair.
All right, I'll put it more fairly.
Okay.
You're saying that if it comes to a thing like the Columbia, the dam at Revelstoke, the Revelstoke Dam, that the decision will be made locally and not by hydro?
No. There are other local decisions that hydro makes arbitrarily. The placement of power lines, and that's been a problem in the suburbs. The placement of hydro rights-of-way, the placement of hydro facilities locally. These are things that...
But major policy decisions must be done by your people.
Of course they must be done centrally. No dispute of that, but it's the little things that irritate people.
Well, the poor lady is confused because you're against it and Broadbent's for it.
Look,
However,
there's no confusion. I make it very clear. I have disagreed with the federal sector of my party. That's perfectly okay in a democratic party like ours. I've staked my position for 15 years on that basis. It became an issue far more evident because of the Harrisburg thing, but I've never changed my position.
Go ahead from Victoria.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I'm a recent immigrant from the cradle of the NDP strength, which is Saskatchewan, as Mr. Barrett would know. although BC seems to be doing...
Just get to the point, please.
I was actually forced out of the province as a small businessman by the increase in property tax through a new reassessment of the province. I'm wondering if Mr. Barrett's government is going to do the same thing here.
Well, it's social credit that is under the same gun here for its assessment formula now. You talk to small businessmen in this province and they'll tell you the same story. The McMath Commission was not allowed to finish its job. We had set up a commission under McMath to deal with a whole examination of property tax. It was 2 years into its job. It was killed by social credit, and we do have serious problems in the assessment formula that exists now.
Don't you each have a joint aim of equalization of assessment?
Yes, but they should have let the McMath Commission finish its report.
And is it not impractical to promise, as you will, or they will, or anybody will, yes, 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 we're going to take school taxes off property? We've been hearing that for years from every shade of government.
We made 2 moves in a 5-year program to remove up to $300 from the bottom end of school property tax. You will recall we made 2. We have 3 steps to go to that. We will continue on that program. We disagree completely with Dr. Pat McGeer, who yesterday stated that the local property owner has to pay more of the share. Jack, if we asked for a fair price of our natural gas and got the same price that Mexico is going to ask for next year, we'd have $150 additional million out of our petroleum corporation alone.
That's gas in the sky.
No, it isn't. Remember...
I've seen the reaction from the United States where they say you'll cut down your sovereign and the hell with you.
Jack, they're going to have to import Mexican gas. How can they cut down the use? That's just an idle threat. That gas will have to be bought into that Northwest market.
Powell River, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Hi, Dave.
Hi, how are you?
I was very happy when you were in Powell River recently, to hear you announce that the universal pension plan that had been talked about.
Oh, I forgot
Affordable
this.
pension,
What's this pension plan you're promising people?
Every province has been examining.
For housewives or something?
There has to be a portable pension scheme to fill in the gaps for the small businessman, for the independent operator, and for women. This is, even Joe Clark has announced that the federal Tories now accept this area. There's been a dramatic change in demographics and the population pressures in North America. There are groups, more and more women.
I know that.
Yeah.
I just want to know the details
Okay.
of the plan you're
Voluntary-
promising for some new kind of pension.
Voluntary, portable, provincial pension plan to allow those people who are not in a union, those in small businesses, and women an opportunity to protect themselves for their future financial security.
What will the government contribution be to this pension plan?
The contribution only will be aimed at a mother in the home, fixed on a relative scale of income to some subsidies for her share of that pension. The rest is purely and totally paid for by the subscriber.
My wife has worked...
Just a second, please. This is a very important issue. You're saying that you will set up a financial agency which will invest for small businessmen their pension funds. Is that right?
No. We have.
Don't blame me. It's
No. Let's get it clear. That's a good question. Very important to get it clear. We have a Financial Institutions Act in British Columbia. We will set up under that a BC provincial portable pension scheme.
non-subsidized,
Non-subsidized except in one category.
except for the single parent.
The single parent at home raising children. She's doing a job that saves the taxpayer money, Jack. If we take those children in care, it costs thousands of dollars. We want to give women an option to have some protection when they reach 55 to 60 and face a kind of, well, what happens? Divorce, widowhood, it's happening.
It's the pension for single mothers now you're talking about. Really?
No, it's voluntary participation if women wish to participate in a pension area that hasn't been available before. Joe Clark is now talking about it as well.
Next question before I lose it.
Yeah.
You told me, Mr. Barrett, that you would scrap forthwith the compulsory heroin treatment program.
Absolutely.
Bat Hoskins on this program said, let Barrett tell the parents of the tragic youths who are going to be denied a chance at rehabilitation.
Let me
and you,
tell
of course,
the
have
parents.
talked about benign neglect.
Let me tell the parents who are concerned about drug addiction that $9 million spent in preventative work with young children who exhibit serious social problems and have no place to go is a better dollar spent than $9 million husbanding 9 drug addicts in Brannon Lake. Jack, you and I both know that the only way to prevent drug addiction is preventative, aggressive work on the streets with kids that are hanging around there, young prostitutes who are hanging around on the streets, young boys who are hanging around on the streets. No work, no programs, no direction of those people. If you tell me that the $9 million at the end of the road is where the money should be spent, I disagree, because I asked Bert Hoskin and you and anyone else to tell me what the treatment program is. There is no known treatment program.
You're saying leave the hardcore addict, whether they're 21 or 31 or 41 or 81, to go down the road to death.
I'm saying that if I knew of a treatment program for that hardcore addict, I would provide that treatment program. But no one, Bert Hoskin or anyone else, has a treatment program, and they're only duplicating programs that are failures. They have cut out, Jack, a serious mistake they've made for those hardcore addicts, and I want every parent who has a hardcore addict to listen to this. They have cut out the most effective treatment program of all, and that is by the evangelical Christian groups who did volunteer work on the streets with a hardcore addict. They had greater success than any government program, and they're no longer operating because of social credits plan. The evangelical Christian groups have done a better job with the hardcore addict than anyone else, and now they're out of the picture.
Well, you're the politician. You're the man running for premier. I just wish the scheme had been given half a chance.
It has been.
Because all else has failed.
Jack, it has been given half a chance, and I told people before, and I'm telling people now, it cannot and it will not work. They've been, how many? They've had over a year. They've got 9 addicts and 50 staff, Jack.
Oh, they've been harassed and hounded every which way. You
By
know that
whom?
way. Not by you. By many other aspects of the whole business.
That's
However,
crying
your
wolf. That's crying wolf.
Your position, sir, is back to the old system with street work by social workers and the youngsters.
Every
and what
child-
has that done to clear up Davy Street? Nothing.
Well, because, Jack, the harassment we got when we moved into the programs of community resource boards to get to work on those streets, to get down to dealing with those problems instead of the mayors and others yelling around, oh, we've got prostitutes here, prostitutes. We were beginning to do something about it, and those programs were killed.
Mr. Barrett, on that aspect, we'll agree to disagree.
Thank you very much, but I know time will prove you wrong.
Webster and Mr. Barrett after this break. Oh, just by the way, don't these aldermen running for the legislature give you a pin in the neck regardless of which party they come from? They want the best of both worlds right now. Do you encourage that?
No, I heard that Mike Harcourt made the statement that he would try to do both jobs. I make it very clear, as I have to Mike, one job at a time, that's all.
Make it clear to Kennedy as well. And the other
Yes,
one,
yes,
his
one
voice,
job
I
at a
think.
time. One job at a
Go
time.
ahead. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Barrett,
Yes.
when you get back, would you be in favor of the provincial government and the municipalities working together to develop lots like Prince George does on the market between Port Moody and Mission? It's all gravelly soil. It's not good for agricultural anyway, except for pit meadows.
Fair enough. He's got the question. Here's the answer.
Yes, that was pioneered by Prince George about 25 years ago. That's where we were moving in terms of making Crown land available to the municipalities. I like the idea. I can't specifically say if it applied to the area you're talking about, but the concept has worked beautifully in Prince George.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, regarding the immediate obvious taxes like sales tax and income tax and homeowners grants, what is your policy regarding that?
Whatever government is elected on Thursday, the budget is committed until next March. It would be foolish for any government to alter the existing budget. Businesses and investors have made decisions on that budget that's now there. It would remain exactly the way it is until next March, when a new budget would be brought in by whatever government is in power.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. I was just wondering, Pacific Western Airlines has eliminated 79 flight attendant jobs in Vancouver in spite of the commitment they made publicly not to do so.
Right.
These jobs are being transferred to Alberta. If elected, Mr. Barrett, what would you intend to do about this?
I would pick up the phone and talk to Peter Lougheed, who I had a very good relationship with, and we would talk about transportation problems in British Columbia and in Alberta, And I am sure that without any threats or any coercion, we could work out a stop to losing those jobs from British Columbia.
Go ahead from Salmo, please.
To Mr. Barrett, what are you going to do about built-in medical conspiracy in the Workmen's Compensation Board of British Columbia that deprives disabled workers of a decent pension?
Well, first of all, Mr. Barrett, before you answer, I don't think that is, broadly speaking, a question that can be answered. Right. There is discontent about some decisions of the Compensation Board. Let me say on behalf of both the NDP and Social Credit,
well, I have
the number of
question.
complaints about compensation, which I've had in my job, has dropped to very few. Yeah. They are all complex causes, and the best people to fight it are the unions where they're involved or the advocate if they're not. And I'm quite sure we can't subscribe to some vague, widespread medical conspiracy.
Yeah. I'd like to add, Jack, that before our election, you'll recall that one of the most major number of calls you got, and I got as an MLA, were compensation cases. The new Labor Code and Workers' Compensation Act dramatically cut down, but there appears to be new problems emerging. I would like to look at the appeal system, just the appeal system. But you're right, you cannot blanketly describe it as a doctor's conspiracy.
Now, there may be a conspiracy to opt out, though, of Medicare. You're going to have to open your checkbook to them, too, to keep them happy, aren't you?
Dennis Koch had an excellent relationship with the medical profession of this
relationships don't matter, sir.
Yes.
They're dropping down to the level of net income of less than an IBEW man, and they're beginning to show their
doctors have a right, like everyone else, to bargain. In terms
they're
of
a good union.
Yeah, they're a good union, and lawyers are a union as well. The gross national product figure of medical care costs in Canada is just under 7%. We can handle our medical care costs in terms of the gross national product at around 7%. There are some right demands by doctors in terms of catch-up, not dramatic catch-ups, but some correct demands. We will not allow Medicare to be destroyed. The costs are not soaring out of the capacity of the country to handle them.
How much do we pay co-insurance under Social Credit? $4?
I'm not sure what the exact figure is.
$4. You bring it back to $1, of course.
No, we leave. Look, Jack, we're not going to rush
I'm only reading and listening to your ads.
No, I didn't say that we'd bring it back
like
to
you're going to cut the ICBC rates by a third.
The ICBC rates, as Social Credit has now caught on to what they have to do, we will go back to giving people a fair rate. If they drive badly, we're going to sock it to them. And if we catch people drinking and they drive, they're really going to pay.
In that case, you're going to have to shake up the Attorney General's Department. It's cheaper to kill somebody on the highway in British Columbia with drink on you than to be caught in a Batmobile. And I'm prepared to document
the
that.
next move in terms of ICBC rates and tough traffic laws will be on drinking drivers. No question about it. We started the Batmobile. We will expand it. We don't want anyone on that road who's drinking. And I don't care if they vote NDP, Social Credit, Liberal, or Conservative.
Agreed with you, but may I say, sir, after intensive investigation, since I came on this program, that your biggest problem is in the delivery of justice through your regional Crown Council system more than the Batmobiles on the highways.
I will take a serious look at what the circumstances were that brought that case to the disastrous non-finish that you've outlined.
And another one, and more, dozens from throughout the province.
No question.
People slaughtered on the highway, no charges.
No question.
Or where a punishment, $300 fine. Unbelievable cases
Jack,
that come to me.
I agree.
And I don't condemn Social Credit, you or NDP. I condemn the Attorney General's Department all the way through.
Alec MacDonald was making moves to become aggressive in that area. We lost those under Gardy Gardam. Can you get Gardy on your show?
No.
Okay. There's an answer. Why
There's more to it than that, Mr.
All right,
Barrett.
but the Attorney General, whether it's...
You set up this convoluted regional Crown Council system, which does not seem to be working.
Because
seems to have taken away from good police officers the right to prosecute simple cases.
We set up the police college. We upgraded police services in this province. We set up CLU. Then we set up the regional councils, so we wanted administration of justice to be more clear-cut. I can say to you very firmly that I am disappointed in the lack of aggressiveness shown by Gardy Gardam, the former Liberal, now Socred AG. Alec MacDonald would come on programs and talk to people. He was the chief law enforcement officer, and Gardy has not aggressively pursued that responsibility.
Sir, I think the entire Attorney General's Department, under your government as well as their government, needs a if you'll forgive the very treasonable mention, a bomb underneath it. Webster.
Okay.
Yeah, hello, Jack.
After this break, hold on, please. This campaign, Mr. Barrett, is it boiled down like the rather disturbing federal campaign to a battle of personalities?
No.
I mean, these commercials that the Fed libs, the Fed Tories are doing.
Yeah.
Is this not the same now? It's
No.
either Barrett or Bennett?
No. I think the issues, I do believe in the metropolitan area, the issues have not been as clearly defined, but as I've traveled around to the smaller communities of the province, the issues are very clear. They're economics, unemployment, and a lack of stability at the local level. Many of the small communities of this province, particularly the Okanagan, you're going to see a surprise in the vote in the Okanagan. You wait and see. They have suffered.
You're not going to tell me.
No, I'm not predicting.
that Dendy's going to beat Bennett.
No, I'm just saying to you that there is unrest in those rural communities and interior communities over the lack of economic security.
You know, the unemployment is virtually invisible in the metropolitan areas.
Yes, in the metropolitan area, because everything becomes anonymous. But in a rural area, it's very evident what's happened.
20,000 in 1976, the average household income in BC was 20,400.
Yeah.
It's probably now 24,000.
And the cost of food's going up by about a percentage point a month, Jack, and they can't keep up with it.
That's why ferry fares are $15, I suppose, isn't it?
I think that you have to understand that people want an opportunity to catch up. That's what they want. They want an opportunity to live on their own and survive. In terms of the economy and unemployment, it's very devastating in the suburbs and in the interior of British Columbia.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Yes.
I hope you're as aggressive tomorrow when you're...
Plan to be. Do my very best.
Dave,
Yeah.
I wonder if you have any idea what it would cost for the opening of the legislature and bringing in the budget and then calling an election.
I don't think it's overly costly to do that. The House had to be called anyway, and calling the election, well, that was the decision made by the Premier. No money lost to this point, no significant money at this point. It was a political decision. The budget, the only criticism I have was delaying calling the House so long. We should have been back in there much earlier than we were. But you cannot fault the government once they made that decision. There's no over-expenditure of money there.
What about would you elaborate a little on selling the ferries? Was it Laurentide Finance?
I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the Eastern firm. I can get it for you. It was a foolish move. We're going to pay twice to get our own ferries back.
I heard one statement that...
Give them a chunk of cash in their hand for the moment.
Yeah, for the moment. They didn't need that cash.
Go ahead from Nelson, please.
Yes, a statement and a couple of questions. I think, first of all, it's unfortunate that Bennett refuses to debate Dave Barrett. And two things I'd like...
That's something between Mr. Barrett and Mr. Bennett.
Right.
Has no connection with me or this program in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, the only connection, I made the offer that I had this hour and a half with Jack Webster, and I would be willing to share it. But Jack Webster was right out of this. He's in.
I said I wasn't going to sandbag or be a shill for anybody.
That's right.
They're both grown-up boys. Mr. Bennett will be on by himself tomorrow, and perhaps that's the way it should be. Go ahead on your question.
I know it's a matter of NDP policy to reinstate David Thompson University Center here in Nelson.
Yes.
Four-year degree granting program. Wonder if you could elaborate
Yes.
a little bit on...
Bring back Notre Dame.
David Thompson University, yes, yeah. Sorry, what was the rest of your statement?
I wonder if you'd elaborate a little bit on exactly how you would, what you would do to restore that to a four-year degree granting program, other than just doing it.
Well, it's not going to be done overnight. That region of the community does serve not only British Columbia, but Alberta. We are benefiting from Alberta's specific university programs, veterinary schools, and other areas. That region needs a four-year degree granting college. David Thompson is the site. It was premature some years ago to start that university there. It was a private university at that time. Without going through all of the details, it is obvious now that that area, that region, with further coal developments that will come out of there, further coal developments is now ready for a four-year degree granting.
Were you a member of FANDU, that famous group?
Myself, no.
Oh, lots of friends in it. Where are you speaking from? Well, not that one.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, Mr. Barrett.
Yes.
Is it the provincial government or the municipal government that's responsible for the release of small holdings of beautiful farmland? Right across the street from me in Richmond on number 1 road, there's a beautiful potato farm that is now going up in houses.
No, that's the Agricultural Land Reserve. If you are concerned that it's been taken out of the Agricultural Land Reserve, I'd suggest you get a hold of my office and give me the details right away. We'll take a look at it.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, Dave.
Yes.
I'm trying to remain optimistic and impartial, but so far, on a negative point, you have emphasized rather adequately the failings or shortcomings of the Socrates, what they, didn't do, or inadvertently where they did do something, they did it all wrong, as according to you.
Okay, look, I think it's important not to spend all of my time in an election campaign knocking the Socrates. I have said clearly there is very little that I could do or say that's done as much damage to social credit as they've done to themselves. I'm leaving with Jack a copy of the Auditor General's report showing how sloppy and inadequate social credit was in the last year of handling taxes and handling money. In one instance, they were short by a year of collecting $26 million in stumpage fees. These are facts, but I'm talking about the future as well.
Does it not also criticize your administration?
Sure it does.
Fair enough.
So far,
Premier Bennett, on April the 19th in Kelowna, predicted that you will lose your seat again.
Every time you...
Just a minute, I want an answer to this.
I don't agree with his prediction. We'll find out on Thursday night.
Have you got an election prediction, Mr.?
No, I have no prediction. I've been very happy in the campaign. I've enjoyed it. I've worked harder than I've ever worked in my life, and I feel terrific.
And kept your jacket on every time.
Every single time. That's right. It's been... if I could take a moment, I want to thank everybody who has been so helpful, and especially my wife, Shirley, for the first time had the opportunity of being with me through the campaign. It's been wonderful and a chance to meet British Columbians all over again. This is a beautiful place, a beautiful piece of earth. No matter who wins, we all must work to make this even a better province.
You're touching my heart, but I'm merely letting you run down because it's the last 15 seconds.
Okay.
And I don't have time to take another call on the subject.
Okay. Thank you,
30
Jack.
seconds. Dave Barrett, the man who says many things this morning.
Right.
Including a number of aspects of what he will do, all in a much more modest and controlled way than the last time.
Yes.
If we are to believe you, Mr. Barrett.
Yes, because I've got a few scars. The railroad, the oil refinery, back to negotiations on steel mill, jobs and investment in British Columbia.
Steel mill with all that pollution?
No.
Greenpeace won't like you.
Jack, we can control the pollution of a small steel mill. It's needed as an integrated part of our economy.
Do me a favor. On your way out, catch a gypsy moth, rub it with soap and kill it.
Okay.
And give my love to Greenpeace.
Okay.
My thanks to Mr. Barrett after this break.
Thank you.
Morning, Mike.